Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of On the Throttle with Jacqui and Josh. Welcome back. We've got another great show for you this week. We had last week's program talking a bunch about exciting new motorcycles from EICMA, and then not to be outdone, the British had one of their largest motorcycle trade shows this past week as well, and a couple of very new models were released at that. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and unless you've been living underneath a rock, you might have missed this beautiful custom Indian from Go Takamine that has been burning down the internet. I'm going to talk about that, and is BSA back on today's show? And what do you have for us today, Josh?
So we've got a couple of things. The SLR has been reintroduced. Now, what that is and what that means, we're going to dive into that. And then we're going to do a pretty deep dive on technology that you never, ever, ever want to use.
All the best technology that you never want to have anything to do with. I love
Correct.
the sound of that. And also, just as a quick little side note, Josh, I don't know what you've been up to, but just last weekend I had the good fortune of going with the team here at MPN out to a really awesome show in Milwaukee, a flat track race and a custom bike show called Mama Tried. We shot tons of video, and we're going to have those stories for you in later MPN stories. I cannot wait to bring those to you guys. As always, thank you for clicking, liking, sharing, and subscribing to all of our different digital platforms. And thank you so much for tuning in. And now let's jump right on into it. Josh, I'm sure you've seen out there this beautiful, beautiful custom Indian Chief that has just been scorching it down the internet. Everybody's been losing their marbles about it. It has been everywhere. It is an absolute stunner, built by a gentleman named Go Takamine, who runs a company called Brat Style. This is a beautiful brand new Indian Chief that he customized to turn into this very cool retro style bobbers. Go Takamine is one of those rare builders whose style is both hard to define yet immediately identifiable. You can always tell his work, this awesome brat styling. He built this 2022 Super Chief Limited custom for a client, and it's just been all over the place. It's got all these rad little bits and bobs on it, including a 1940s Indian Chief fender to fit, and he made a little sissy bar to mount it. Just this beautiful bike. They launched this from the folks over at Indian. And again, this is a gentleman named Go Takamine who runs Brat Style. He also races some vintage bikes. I've seen him racing, and he's always cool old bikes all the time. I thought this was really exceptional, and I wanted to go ahead and feature it. He's based out of Long Beach, and he is a fixture, like I just said, at any racing event in Southern California, absolutely showing off this stunning Indian Chief. I really love this bike. Josh, what do you think about this bike? Because I love the fact that the engine is so prominently featured. You know, Indian motorcycles, since their reboot the past 8 to 10 years ago, they've been building beautiful bikes for sure, but I don't remember seeing a lot of this focus on this engine. And I mean, look at the finned top that they did to reference the earlier Indian motorcycles. I think just showcasing it in this bike in particular, I think this is just a total stunner. What do you think about that, Josh?
I agree. And one of the things that I really like about this is that it is that classic style. And it's in a brand new bike. So, I mean, the reason why we all aren't riding 19s and 40s and 50s bikes is because after about 8 or 10,000 miles, you have to go back and pick parts up off the road. You get all the modern luxuries, conveniences, reliability, performance, but yet you've got that look that everyone loves. Well done.
Yeah, I think this is absolutely incredible. If they built this bike, I mean, I would be one of the first in line to go pull the trigger on it. I think it's just a total masterpiece. I've got another slide, Ash, if you want to throw it up, that showed a little bit of the detail of the tank, I believe, and the paint that's on it, I think is just killer. I love that little solo saddle. I love, again, Go Takamine from Brat Style is all about these awesome little details, that scalloped paint. But again, look at that engine. I mean, wouldn't you think if you just saw this and didn't know about motorcycles, wouldn't you think this was from the 1940s? I think this looks just totally period correct and wonderful. So I wanted to go ahead and feature it a little bit on today's show. And I know you got some news coming up while we were talking all things Polaris. I know you've got some news coming up for our folks, our friends over at Slingshot.
I do. So Polaris is just, as a matter of fact, yesterday announced that the SLR is coming back. Now, this was a model that they kind of got rid of because it's slotted in between the SL and the R model. They let it go for a little while, and they're like, you know what? We need to bring this back. The demand's there for it. It's got some really, really cool stuff and some accessories for it too. On this, with the 22 models, you've got this new sport hood that looks really good, and it's got this vent on the front of it. Now, they redesigned it for better air through the cockpit, because you got to realize, I mean, in a Slingshot, same thing as a motorcycle, same thing as anything else. If your head is getting beat about all day long, you're just not going to enjoy it as much. So they redesigned the hood to make sure that there's less buffeting and that you're much more comfortable in the cockpit area. On top of that, they are making Brembo brakes standard on R models. So the SL, the S, and the SLR can get these as an upgrade. Brakes are 14% larger. There's a 4-pot caliper in them. I'm pretty sure that when you stand on the binders, you will be able to put your eyeballs at the front end of your helmet on that. They've also come up with 4 different accessory collections: the Drive, Escape, Show, and Design series of collections on this. Now, in this, there is a new top. It's called the Excursion Top. No tools are needed, so you can pull that off. I mean, if you want sunshine cruising, great, pop the top off. If you're sunburned, put the top back on. If it starts to rain, whatever. It just really adds versatility to these vehicles already. To me, I think there's so much that Polaris has done with these Slingshots to make this market open for people that may not have wanted to get into it. I'm pretty excited to see this model back. I love the new styling on it. I'm interested to see if we can get a ride in one and see how she handles. What are your thoughts on the way this thing looks there, Jacqui?
I totally agree with you, Josh. You know, I'm really excited for this. I love the Slingshot. I think they're super cool. I have had the chance to drive and ride in one, and it's about 170 horsepower at 1,700-pound curb weight. That to me says rock and roll and a really, really good time. These are very, very fast. They stop on a dime. They feel like a super, super high zooted up go-kart, but with all sorts of like little finishes and a little bit more luxury now, especially with the roof. I love the styling of them. You know, Slingshot in the history of their existence is a very polarizing thing, right? People are either into it or they are not into this thing. I, for one, am part of Team Yes and Team Slingshot. I think these are super neat. I think that adding a roof to them really opens up this product to a lot more people who don't want to be exposed to the elements. I know for a hot second there, a couple of years ago, they were trying to like really get these tops dialed in and they weren't quite right. But I love the idea of being able to then with the little tops on them, being able to use them for more like desert and make them be a little bit more rugged, a little bit more outdoorsy and off-road. I think that that's super cool. I can't wait to see these. I think that they look absolutely brilliant. They take customizing like gangbusters. I love the accessories for these. This is a yes for me. I really am pumped about these things. I think that they're super cool. People who poo-poo and say that they're not into this, you know, it's the same thing for me as e-bikes. I'm like, go ride one. Go ride one, and then you tell me whether you're into this or not, because I dare you to drive this thing and tell me that you're not totally into it.
It's funny. We've got a review that I did on the Can-Am Riker, and that if you're looking to have something that's going to compete with leader bikes, it's not it. If you're looking for another way to get out and just rip through pavement, this is it. Yeah. This opens it up to so many more people. I mean, there's all sorts of great things that can come from this. Once again, I mean, it's the same thing. I really do like it. I think it's a great idea. I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening with it. Speaking of which,
this is a bravo for me.
Yes. Speaking of which, speaking of bringing something back, you got something, don't you?
What's old is new again for the folks over at BSA. That's right. For the half of you that are watching this right now that are like, who? That's right. So a company from the Wayback Machine called BSA, which stands for Birmingham Small Arms, British motorcycle company. They had the intellectual property and rights purchased by the Indian, not Indian the motorcycle company, but Indian as in the location, India, company Mahindra purchased these rights several years ago, and they have been rumoring and threatening that they were going to relaunch it. And sure enough, this past week at Motorcycle Live in the UK, they launched this bike. They had a little press event and a party. They showed off the very first handful of models, and this is what's on your screen right now. So this is the revived BSA motorcycles. They held a special preview event ahead of Motorcycle Live this past week. The star of this event was the company's first new motorcycle since the resurrection, where it's been teasing ahead of its official public debut for quite a while ago. In fact, the bike isn't just any star. It's a brand new Gold Star 650 with a dual overhead cam, single cylinder. While the bike was proudly displayed at BSA's special pre-launch event, further details aren't quite available yet. The bike's formal public debut during Motorcycle Live, more details and specs are expected. In an interview, the owner said that the Gold Star 650 should roll out to dealers as a 2022 model. They have not released pricing either, but they are saying that this is going to be built in the UK. So I am definitely super interested in this bike, and I know we've got another slide of this guy as well, and this is just, I think this is wonderful. I think this looks the part. The great big radiator on the front, I'm not going to lie, is kind of a bummer. But I think the styling of this bike is super beautiful. And Mahindra, with those super, super deep pockets, they can afford to do fun projects like this. And this is part of their classics bike lineup, because they also launched the Czech company, Java, or Java, as it's actually said, I believe. Java, they relaunched that bike as well several years ago, and they're doing really, really, really well with it. They are not in the US, which is a total bummer, but those bikes are also absolutely stunning. Josh, what do you think about this BSA reboot?
So it's interesting, and I really think you hit the head of the nail there, the deep pockets. When Indian went through its 10 reboots and 15 other owners, every single time they ran out of money to get what they wanted to done. Mahindra has the money to back this, to do it right, to do it correctly, to get it to market. From a look standpoint, it is classic British bike. I mean, yeah, like you said, there's the radiator there, but overall, if you saw this cruising down the road, it is just classic British bike, especially that rear fender in that. I mean, it's just, yeah. Yes. I love the look of it. So and I mean, right now, those are almost as hot as adventure bikes. So to get in now with Mahindra's pockets on that, I think it's a great looking bike. I think it's going to have a ton of nostalgia factor to it, and that alone will sell a fair number of them. I'm excited to see how well this goes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. They're not really releasing a ton of details, because this is still incredibly hot off the presses news. My only concern is Mahindra going to do the same as they did with that Java reboot and make this be overseas only? That would be a super bummer. But again, a lot of companies do that because they want to test the waters. They want to build the buzz around these bikes before they bring them to the larger market, or actually not larger market, because Asia is the largest market, but before they bring them to a large market like the US, I think they really want to go ahead, plant those seeds, get that buzz going first. And again, like, what's their dealership network going to look like? Where are these going to be sold? There's a lot of question marks around this bike, but for what they've released so far, I think it looks awesome, and I can't wait to see it. I think it's a really neat, cool thing, and I think that again, I keep mentioning it, but that Java as well, I think is just wonderful, and I wish that they would bring it here. But speaking of things that are wonderful, but your story is things that are wonderful that you never want to know about or use. I know you've got some new news going on, Josh, too. So go ahead, tell me all about it.
So Mips, unveiled that they now have a virtual test lab. So what I really want to do with this is I kind of want to dive into this and why this is important. So there's the Snell standards, the DOT standards. Yes, we are going to talk about helmets. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I know some people that actually work in traumatic brain injury centers. In the same sense, I've had a number of concussions myself, so I have to be very careful. You're only going to spend as much on a helmet as your head is worth, is what I've always kind of said. In that, this virtual test lab that Mips has is largely going to allow them to test helmet concepts on a computer rather than having to take and go through dummy testing and all this other stuff. What that's going to do is it's going to speed up how quickly they can bring new stuff to the market. Now, the thing that Mips is known for and kind of famous for is their technology started to realize that there are two things involved when we hit the deck, unfortunately. One is everyone thinks it's that blunt trauma is what does the damage, and that's only part of the equation. And it's the fact that what happens is when your head stops, your brain is continuing to move inside your head a little bit, and then that hits your skull. Unfortunately, what Mips figured out is that a lot of injuries too are torsional, meaning that your head twists and your brain twists inside of there. So it's all about slowing that down. It's the same reason why punching a wall hurts more than punching a pillow. That pillow slows your hand down just enough to make it so you don't probably break your hand. So they figured the same thing with torsional items on this. So this, of course, the tests basically that DOT and Snell used to do were essentially drop tests. I mean, everyone knows what happens when you drop a watermelon out of a second-story window. This, when you bring torsional stuff and twisting loads into play, it's just a whole different array of equations and science and mathematics in this. So their ability now to do these virtual tests and bring new helmet technology out is going to be amazing. Now, part of the reason why you may not necessarily hear of Mips directly is they sell the technology to other helmet companies. Bell and other companies like that, Arai, they can buy that Mips system to fit in their helmet. So to me, anytime that we can save lives or save someone from their life being changed is an amazing, amazing thing. And that is why this is, to me, is the most exciting news I've seen all week. And it has nothing to do with going faster. It has nothing to do with better suspension. It is all about making sure that we can get out for that next ride. What are your thoughts, Jacqui? I'm interested to hear it on this.
Well, no, for sure. So, I mean, I've even told you, I've heard of Mips for years now, and a lot of the more premium type helmets, love to talk about it and throw it out there that it has Mips and this and that. But honestly, I'm like, well, what the heck is a Mips? Like, is somebody going to explain this to me or what? Like, I mean, is it like a communication system? Is it a mirror? Like, who knows what's in there? Like, everybody just throws this Mips word around. So I do think it's really important to talk about. I think that the evolution of helmets and helmet tech is always fascinating. People are always on the hunt for that safer but lighter and smaller shell. I think everybody's on the hunt for that. That's the one biggest pushback from working consumer facing events where I maybe am representing helmets or we're riding bikes and you have to wear a helmet. There's a huge chunk of riders that really don't want to put a helmet on. And the two biggest things is that they're too big, they're too big and that they look weird. And I'm like, well, you can't see yourself while you're riding, so that seems a little silly to me, but everybody wants to look cool on a motorcycle, right? So I totally support, except for you, Josh, but I totally support people wanting, I totally support these companies making progress with helmet technology at all times. I think it's super important. And again, helmets are real. Like, you have to wear them out here. It just is what it is. But there's a lot of places where you don't have to, Josh.
I totally have to argue your point about when people say they want to look cool on a motorcycle, because 90% of us look better when we put a helmet on. That is wholeheartedly the truth, that we all
You're not
look better
wrong.
wearing a helmet.
I've
It's
tried
just
to
the way
talk
it
to our
is.
bosses on this show about you having to wear a helmet during the
Yeah,
program,
I
and
get it.
we're working on it. I just need like a sponsor. So if
Perfect.
Rye or Bell, give me a call. We'll go ahead and put Josh in one of those for the entire program. Thank you.
Yeah,
Please
no,
and thank you.
I'd be happy to, and that way, if I fall out of my chair when you say something to me like that, I'm in good shape. It's, to me, the big thing that I see with it is like you said, the lightness plays into so many things, and what's so difficult about helmets is so many people. It's tough to say I'm going to spend $500 on something that I hope I never have to use. And it's difficult for a lot of people to justify that. And for me, it's one of those things where I look at it when they say you can save 5 grams on your helmet. Well, when you realize that that's 5 grams that your neck isn't having to support when your head snaps forward on something or whatever. I'm all about, enjoy the ride, but dress for the slide is, it's one of those things where I want to make sure I can ride again someday. And I also want to make sure that I'm not a burden to those around me. And new helmet technology is a great way to do that.
Absolutely. And my last thought on that topic is also, 2020, the silver lining of COVID is that everybody discovered outdoor power sports, including ATV and UTV. So I really want to make sure that those communities that are brand new, that are just joining our community, also understand that safety is paramount and that there are helmets that are appropriate for ATV and UTV and are comfortable and are lighter weight and all that good stuff. So that was my last little chunk for that. But I also have one last bit of news today, Josh, and I do have a slide. Miss Ashley has it, I believe, is that, again, at that trade show, that motorcycle live show, Triumph did reveal a new bike. This is the 1200cc Tiger, and this, I think, is just a stunner. You and I talk about ADV motorcycles all the time here on the program, but this is again, a Triumph Tiger 1200 arrives. It is lighter, it is more powerful, and it also comes with an option. You can buy a 30-liter tank. So if you're planning on really going out, knocking down miles, doing Baja, doing some sort of cross-country trip or run to Alaska, there is the opportunity to buy that oversized enduro type tank. So I think that is really, really very cool. Let's see what's going on. The inline triple engine has been given a significant overhaul, including a drop in capacity. The triple is now 1160 cc's. Despite that, there's a healthy boost in power to 148 horsepower and a decent bump in torque to 90 foot-pound of torque as well. So again, this is lighter, this is more power, and yet still less displacement, which, whatever, that's no big deal. But I think this is just a stunner. And then also Triumph just announced that they just built within this past month their 1 millionth motorcycle at their Hinckley plant, which is from approximately 1980. So congratulations on 2 different fronts for the folks over at Triumph. Josh, what do you think about this excellent 1200 Tiger?
So I have not seen the specs on it yet, but I know Triumph is a company that's going to do their homework. What I've found about the heavyweight ADV market right now is everyone is doing a good job of finding their niche for it. You want a bike that's a little bit better on road than off. The Pan America does great with that. If you want the classic kind of do everything fairly well bike, then you want the GS. If you want if you want something that's going to be just bananas, you want the KTM. So I'm going to be interested in seeing where Triumph kind of slots in. And I love the fact that each one of these bikes, you can't say which one's the best. It's going to be which one's the best for what you want to do. So I'm really excited to see how this Triumph slots in there with that.
I just thought it was a really sharp, really great looking bike from the folks at Triumph. I know the Tiger is definitely one of those like cult bikes from them. People that ride them are really, really hooked and are really sold on this product. I have not had the chance to ride one. I'm not going to lie. I would love to. I think they look like a really good time. But especially with it being that triple power plant, I think that's really interesting because everybody else that's playing in this space is doing twins. So I think the opportunity to ride a triple in the dirt I think is really incredibly interesting. And now it's lighter and has more horsepower, has more power. I mean, what was the number? 147 horsepower. That's crazy. That's a lot. That's a lot of fun in the dirt, and plenty of guts to go do tarmac and do highway all the way across America if you wish as well. So I think that's a really neat, cool thing. And that's about it for today's program, Josh. An awful lot of news going on this week. Some new bikes, some helmet technology, all sorts of cool stuff going on. And we're going to have another great show coming your way next week as well. So make sure you stick around. Make sure you hit that notifications on and give us a subscribe and a like over at our social pages. We are on the Instagrams and Facebooks as well. So thank you so much, everybody. Have an awesome week no matter where you are out there in the world. Ride safe, and we will see you next week.